Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. We are back, Shahnavaz.
Love it.
The Mavericks are back, so we are back. It's kind of like the first day of school, right?
Yeah.
You know, were you one of those students where you put your first day of school clothes on the doorknob or on the hanger in the closet getting ready to go?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. You spend like a week figuring out like, what am I going to wear? Like, how do I want to look? What girls are in the class? What girls are in my class? I got to make sure, that's how it goes.
You gotta be
There you
fresh.
go. There
Yeah,
you go.
I was always putting I don't want to tell our age, but I was always like putting the FUBU or the South Pole or the Jinko, all those
You're a
clothes.
Jinko guy. I was.
Yeah, those big shorts.
No. I was an Abercrombie kid. Unfortunately,
The Abercrombie.
Looking
the
back
cologne
on it now,
smelling.
I regret it. Yeah, now I regret it because now I don't wear that crap. But back in the day,
I went through my phase.
Yeah, try to be somebody you're not, and then you figure out who you are, and then you stick with that.
That's the problem with Abercrombie. I mean, I went through my phase too, but right when you walk in that store, like you get that big whiff of like,
and it's completely
damn.
dark, and it's like, what the hell? Like I can't find any. I don't know what color this shirt is. So you just walk out, and you're like, all right, whatever.
It prepared me for the clubs and the bars.
There you go.
later on in life.
That's what they plan for.
All right, Shahnavaz. So let's get into some Mavericks here. Obviously, we are back, and it feels good to be back. I mean, obviously, the Mavericks just came off a finals appearance, and they acquired some great additions to that team. 13 players returned from that roster, and the Mavericks just announced the training camp roster, and obviously, we talked about it in the last couple podcast episodes, but it's been a while. So the Mavericks, they add Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes, and then Spencer Dinwiddie returned to the roster. And, they got some good pickups at the end of the roster when you look at Kessler, Edwards, and the guys trying to make a two-way spot. You got Emmanuel Miller, Jamarian Sharp as well, the 7'5" center. So, Shahnavaz, before we even get to the storylines for training camp, media day is coming up on Monday, and then training camp in Las Vegas. The Mavs will head out to Vegas for training camp. We talked about that a little bit. And then the preseason starts October 7th. So before we get into training camp, what was your overall assessment or analysis on how the Mavericks filled out their roster coming off a finals appearance?
I mean, I don't think it gets any better than what the Mavericks did. You talk about a team. There's a lot of. It's easy to be.
Nico home run.
Oh, grand slam home run, bottom of the ninth inning to win the World Series. That's what it was for Nico. It's Joe Carter. That's what Nico Harrison did. He pulled to Joe Carter. I mean, it's really easy for a team to be complacent after coming off a finals appearance. You add a piece here or there. And you figure you run it back, right, with the same team that you had, and you add a couple of guys and assume, okay, let's take a shot. But Nico didn't sit around. Nico said, all right, we've got to improve. We know what our weaknesses are. The West isn't going to get any easier, with up and coming teams like San Antonio, and Denver's still there, even though they struggled in the playoffs last year. You've still got to go through
the Rockets.
The Rockets are up and coming. Minnesota is going to be good again. Ja Morant's back for Memphis. I mean, the West is not going to be easy.
Kings with DeRozan. I mean, every night.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy at all. So if you're Nico, you figure out, you've got two avenues, right? You either run it back and you add a couple pieces here or there, or you do what he did and you go out and you get a Quentin Grimes, a Najee Marshall, a Klay Thompson. You bring in key guys that can fit exactly what this team wants to do. And the way that Nico identified what the Mavs' weaknesses were, and we saw it in the finals. I mean, the lack of 3-point shooting, and you go in, you get guys that can shoot 38% or better from three. And I didn't even mention Spencer Dinwiddie. I mean, you bring in another versatile bench guard, and now you have players that fit exactly what this team needs to do. And really a 1-for-1 replacement, if not better than for guys that you lost in Derrick Jones Jr., right? And in Tim Hardaway Jr. being shipped out to Detroit for Quentin Grimes. So Nico did a phenomenal job, and the Mavericks have everything they need now to make another run at the finals. Whether that can happen or not, we'll see. There's a lot to be said regarding health and the schedule and things like that. But I mean, the Mavericks are in a great position to get back.
I agree with you. I mean, Nico did his thing, and he always does his thing, and
Yeah.
it's been full circle moment when you look across the past few years with Nico in his position, and he continues to get better. Every single acquisition or every single signing, it makes sense. That's the biggest thing. It's not like, okay, we didn't get our guys, so let's just find the barrel of the bunch guys and just throw them in and see experiment. No, it's actually he pinpoints his interest in free agents or guys on the trading block, and it makes sense for this team. And I agree with you. And not only just to bounce off what you were talking about with the additions, I also think it makes the Mavericks more balanced on veteran guys, who been in different situations. And then you got Klay Thompson who comes in who has the experience under the brightest lights. I think that's
Yep.
what it really boils down to, because the narrative with this team was, and it still is, that they haven't had a lot of experience in the postseason. You could say Kyrie, of course, Markieff Morris, some of those guys, but like when you look at the totality of this roster, even Luka, I mean, even though he had a run before last season, he's still learning on the biggest stage, because that was his first finals appearance. So I think just having that veteran player in Klay Thompson who's hungry. That's the biggest thing. You got, not only did Nico capture the players that he expects to play good in the Mavericks system, but he also captured players who are hungry. And that's what he did last season with PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. He got more guys who are hungry. You don't think Quentin Grimes wants to show the world how good he is on a good team, and now he's finally healthy again, which we saw with the Knicks, how good he was? You
Yeah.
don't think Najee Marshall, in a bigger light, he did great with the Pelicans, but now you're on a contender. You don't think that he's gonna step up. And Klay Thompson, put some respect on his name,
People.
with all
Yeah.
the thing he went through with the Warriors. So, like you say, it's Spencer. I forgot Spencer too. I mean, he's going to bounce back to show the Mavericks fans that he still has it, because last year he was in a different role. It seems like every team he goes to, he's on a different role, which makes his adaptability really good. But, you know, I'm curious to see how he plays well.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing you talked about is the hunger, right? You talk about a guy in Quentin Grimes who at one point was untouchable in trade talks for Donovan Mitchell with
Yeah.
the Knicks, right? He was
Hmm.
that
He
highly
was good.
coveted, where the Knicks were like, we're not going to give him up for Mitchell, and Klay Thompson. Look, people forget that Klay Thompson is a first ballot Hall of Famer. The guy is one of the greatest 3-point shooters of all time. I think we remember the 0 for 10 game, in the last year, and that's kind of the lasting memory, that people have. But if Klay Thompson, this is 2 or 3 years now removed from his serious injuries, and it takes time to come back. It takes time to recover. We see it in football all the time that it takes a couple of years for guys to come back from, your first year is kind of reacclimation, and, how does your body feel? You kind of figure out the little kinks that you have to. But this is going to be, the revenge tour for Klay Thompson now, and it's going to be,
Like
it's going to be
that.
super exciting to see, because he's going to have so many opportunities with this team. I mean, with Luka and Kyrie dishing him the ball, it's going to be fun to watch. And Najee Marshall brings a hunger and a tenacity and, a ferociousness that I think Derek Jones didn't. Derek Jones was great defensively for the Mavericks in the regular season. We saw him fall off in the playoffs. We saw, kind of the streakiness that comes with a player like him. Najee Marshall has proven to be a really, really valuable piece for a good Pelicans team. And he's one of those guys, who's going to defend, he's going to defend the backs of all the players. He's going to be the one, much like PJ Washington, who's getting in the scuffles, who's going to, he's going to have, he's going to be the one who, tells Luka, step aside, like, I got this, I'll take care of it. You go, you do your thing. Let me defend, let me go ahead and take this guy that's jawing at you. So this is going to be, it's such a refreshing thing over the last few years, Landon, to finally see the Mavericks get free agents, right? a period of like 15 years where all we heard was, Cubans going after this guy and this guy, and the whole failed, Dwight Howard and Darren Williams, and, all those chases. We were always disappointed. We ended up with like OJ Mayo instead. It was just like,
Yeah.
you're kind of like, oh man, like we got to go through this again. This is such a refreshing pace, and now you've got a competitive team that's going to be right there with the best of the West for years to come. I mean, this is a young team. You've only got Kyrie and Klay, really, and Markieff
Hmm.
Morris, that are over that kind of 30, age 30 threshold. Excuse me. This is still a really, really young team, and they're going to have a lot of opportunity to grow together now in training camp, which is a big thing because you're not adding pieces at the deadline and hoping to integrate them, over, the stretch run getting into the playoffs. So you've got a full training camp, you've got a full off season of these guys getting to know each other, working together, practicing together. And it's going to continue to build that chemistry, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to watch. There are some things to look at, just in case for caution. Health. Health is the biggest thing because obviously, if this team is healthy over the course of the year, it's going to be one of the top 3, 4 teams in the league. Just off the expectations off of last season and just another season of continuity, amongst the group. And then you look at, we haven't even mentioned Dereck Lively, him taking that next step in his career as a sophomore in the league and, being a for sure starter for the whole totality of the season and the step that he's going to take as well. And, it's just going back to health. Speaking of Lively, Lively, Maxi Kleba, how many games is he going to play? Kyrie and Luca, and Klay, he played a lot of games last season, but hopefully he holds up for over the course of the season because he won't have that much wear and tear. He'll have a lot of open shots, and I just want to see also playing style as well.
Yeah.
That's something to look at too, because I want to see Jason Kidd and his staff switch it up just a little bit. Now that you have versatile guys, you mentioned them. I mean, Quentin Grimes, he can put the ball on the court. Najee Marshall, he's a good passer. And, Spencer Dinwiddie, he can shoot, he can score, he can hit the mid range. And then you got Klay Thompson, who's lights out shooting, who can come off of pin downs, he can come off of screens. He can do a lot of things that you don't want to just depend on Kyrie and Luca, which they had to. And and also PJ Washington, another season in the Mavs offense. He's going to be more comfortable to take charge in the offensive load as well. So, I want to see a little more flexibility in the thinking offensively in the scheme that they have. I just want to see, because now you have the pieces. I mean, if you have a lineup of Kyrie, Luca, and Klay Thompson, which Marshall will play a lot too, and then PJ Washington, Lively, Gafford. I mean, you have so many ways in thinking that you can go with that roster. I mean, with the offense alone. I mean, there's so many ways that you can explore that and be creative because that is what's going to take you over the hump.
Yeah. And Jason Kidd now has the versatility to really adjust his game plan opponent to opponent, right? To your point,
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't just have to be Luka, Kyrie doing everything. You've
Mhm.
got, like you mentioned, you've got a bunch of ball handlers now that really can kind of take that charge. And depending on who they're playing, who's going to be the focal point of the game. It's going to completely depend, but you have that luxury now where to be able to do that with the roster as deep, that the Mavericks have. And to your point about health, health is always a concern, and there's always going to be games missed. But the Mavericks now are in a spot where you've got veteran, capable guys coming off the bench that can kind of spot start
Yeah.
for the inevitable missed games that are going to happen. Dinwiddie can come in and spot start for you when Luka and Kyrie are out. Dante Exum can start. He can come in and
Mhm.
he can play either that wing spot or even a guard. What is the outlook for Jaden Hardy? How much playing time is he going to get if somebody goes down? Can Hardy step up in his absence? Where you don't have to rely on a streaky Tim Hardaway Jr. anymore. To come in and fill that void. Quentin Grimes can start for you. Maxi can start. There's so many options for this team that even if they do suffer some sort of injury or setback or giving guys rest, I mean, you have that availability now where you can give guys nights off against a weaker opponent if you need to. You don't have to play Luka and Kyrie 38 minutes a night now. You can play them, 34, 32, depending on, how it goes. Take them out in the fourth, let them get some rest. The luxury that's afforded to this team now is something that we haven't seen for the Mavericks in ever. I mean, I can't remember the last time the Mavericks were this deep, had this deep of a roster where they can literally just pick and choose what they want to do.
Yeah, it's been a while. And can we stop back to backs? I mean,
Oh, seriously.
I mean, at the worst, like have a back to back where it's home. I mean, because that's crazy. Just from where we're at, there's so many games, and just I'm tired just traveling anywhere. So I can't even imagine. You're at the top of your game, and you got to travel to another city and play the next day, especially you know at the talent that these players play at. It's hard,
And
but just
it's always like a good opponent too. The next, it's like one night you're playing
yeah.
Detroit, and then you gotta go to Phoenix and play Kevin Durant. And it's like, what? Come on, that's ridiculous.
Seriously, and that brings me to your point, which is a great point, that the how deep this team is. That's crazy because you mentioned Jaden Hardy. We didn't even talk about him with all these players, and Dante Exum. I mean, they were key components of the finals team.
They might not even play this year. Like that's the
Oh,
crazy part.
and that's what's wild because, like you said, they will be. Obviously, you're going to have battles in training camp, but as it's positioned right now, it seems like they will be, spot players on this team for injuries or rest because, this is a big moment for Jaden Hardy. I mean, what, third year? This is the year that you make your money, and that's tough because he's playing on a contender. And he had minutes in the finals, and then the Mavericks go get Dinwiddie and Quentin Grimes, and you still got Exum. So it's like this. Speaking of a training camp, like we can segue into storylines in the training camp, but to me, you know, it's the training camp of Jaden Hardy. I mean,
Yep.
obviously Klay Thompson is the big story, but it really is Jaden Hardy because are you going to get your spot back? Obviously this is a team. You got to build that camaraderie, but are you going to get that spot back? Are you going to let Dinwiddie take your spot? Are you going to let Quentin Grimes take your spot because you were the third guard? You were the combo guard. Obviously, Exum was there for the flexibility. He played 1 through 3, but like you were that guy, and it's tough for him because he's a combo guard. He's not a point guard, but he's not as big as a shooting guard. So it's like this is his training camp. Take
Yeah,
your spot.
absolutely. That's 100% was going to be my point as well. Is this training camp is all about Jaden Hardy in my mind. Obviously, we want to see Klay and we want to see the health and how does he come out and what does the integration look like, with the team. But this is it for Jaden Hardy. I mean, this is his chance. As a player, right? If you're in the league and you're coming off a finals appearance, you played meaningful minutes for this team last year. You were a key cog in getting them to the finals. We remember Jaden Hardy in the series against Oklahoma City, and even in the finals, getting valuable minutes and playing well. I thought we talked about is that he played well, but
And he's
then
young.
and he's young, and then the team brings in a guy who's to take your job. Like that should motivate you. You should have been in the lab all off season working on your game. Come out and prove that, hey, look, Dinwiddie's on a 1-year deal. He's going to be gone after this because I'm taking it. This is my job. He's not taking my spot. That's to me, that's the biggest thing for Jaden Hardy is he's got to prove, much like Josh Green. Last year we talked about, Josh Green's got to
Did.
come out and prove, does he have a spot on the team? And he didn't, unfortunately. He didn't make the jump that we were hoping for, and he gets shipped off at the trade deadline. So I think it's going to be a very similar situation with Jaden Hardy. The other thing that I'm looking forward to is I want to see Kessler Edwards. I think that was a sneaky
Yes.
low pickup. Defensively, Kessler Edwards is awesome. I mean, if you
One of the best two ways now.
yeah, he hasn't, didn't play a lot in Sacramento or Brooklyn, but at Pepperdine coming out of college, that was his MO is the dude is versatile as all hell on defense, can guard 1 through 4. He's got a huge wingspan. He's going to be a two-way guy this year, but you talk about injuries, you talk about health. That's a guy that can come up, can get, be in your rotation, can come in and guard the other team's second or third best player. He's going to be a really valuable piece for this team, as the season wears on and those inevitable injuries come up. I think Kessler Edwards is going to play a big part, especially down the stretch, as when the Mavericks really need him and, they got to fill some spots there. I think he can take minutes away from Maxey. He can take minutes away from potentially Quentin Grimes. We'll see. His offensive game is still a work in progress, but defensively, I mean, the dude is a stud. So I think it's going to be really cool to see, what he does. I think it's a sneaky pickup for the Mavs.
I agree with you. I mean, I like the strategy by Nico. It's a two-way. You are one of the contenders. I mean, most projections have you as the second best team in the West. Some say third, some say a few say first, but it's
Top
when
four
you
for sure. I don't
top
think I've
four for
seen
sure.
anything the Mavs lower than fourth.
And that's what I'm saying, because with two-way players, there's like so many different routes you can go with two-way players. Like, are you getting an international guy just to get a closer look at him? Are you getting a guy who just graduated? Is it a 4-year guy from college, or someone that just slipped through the cracks and he was great in college, but he didn't make it in the NBA? You're still a G League guy. Like, no, like Nico's getting a guy who has NBA experience. And he's getting him as a two-way. And like you said, he can actually play. Like, he can actually be at the end of the roster. He could be a 15th guy, 14th, 13th guy on a roster. So you got him as a two-way. And like you said, he can play games. So you might need him with Maxey's health. So, that's something that's really cool to see Nico say, hey, I'm going to get a guy with NBA experience and just treat him like the 16th guy on this roster. And they're going to need it because, like you said, at times, you don't know what's going to happen in this league. So there's so many games in the regular season. You want this team to be full and healthy when the playoffs start. So you got to have guys who can step up and play. So that's exciting to see as well. But when I look at this roster, obviously Jaden Hardy, we talked about him. I'm looking at OMax too. Like, this
Yeah.
is a training camp.
Forget about OMax.
For OMax, like, he's a first-round pick, and you're going in your second season. The coach said you're going to fight for a rotation spot, and you had a great G League experience with the NBA. You played spot minutes at the end of the game, so you really can't tell what he is. And then the summer league was up and down. So, like, training camp for him is huge.
Yeah.
Like, just as much as Jaden Hardy, because you're a first-round pick. Like, on a lot of other teams, you would be in the rotation, but the Mavericks were a top team. So you got to step up and show that you are part of this young core that the Mavericks are building.
Yeah, and OMax, I mean, I think the idea behind OMax is eventually, the Maxey kind of replacement. I think as Maxey's contract kind of winds down here, I think this is his last year.
Yeah, because the
on his
Mavs
deal.
like to play a lot of wings.
Yeah,
One guard, 3 wings, 1 big. But
Yeah.
Maxey, he's like so versatile. You can play little wing. He's mostly a big who can play 5-4.
Yeah, and I think now that you've got Gafford, that kind of takes away from Maxey playing the 5, and you don't
Yep.
have to go small ball anymore. And if Dereck Lively improves his 3-point shot, that gives you kind of that in and out center that Maxey kind of provides the same skill set for. But you're right. I mean, OMax, we didn't see much from him last year. There were some flashes, but obviously the offensive game is still a work in progress for him as well. His calling card was being a two-way, kind of a good two-way wing, in terms of defensive versatility. And obviously he's athletic. The question is, can he shoot? Right. I think that's ultimately going to be the question. And so you're right. We've got to see some improvement from him as well, because he's going to be fighting for that kind of that end of the bench roster spot. But if he can be on the roster as opposed to a two-way guy, get some valuable minutes, even if it's at the end of games, if he's out, he's playing against NBA competition. We've seen him tear up the G League already. I want to see him have a great training camp where the Mavericks don't have a choice but to keep him on the roster. And, I'd rather have the question of, what do we do with Maxey? What do we do with Dwight Powell? As opposed to, we're going to keep those two guys and we're going to send OMax to the G League with Kessler Edwards. Like, that's kind of worst case scenario in my mind, because I think you're right. Second year, like, this is, we always talk about third year is the year you got to take that jump. But second year, you've got to be able to play valuable minutes to see, for the team to know, like, hey, are you a part of this? Are you a part of the future or not?
Mm-hmm.
We saw the same thing with Josh Green. We saw it with Jaden Hardy. this is going to be a huge month for, for OMax to be able to see, like, is he a part of this core going forward?
Yeah, it definitely is because, like you said, the third year is where you have to shine. You have to make your money. But the second year, like you said, you have to show flashes. I'm not saying come in here and be a starter, which he was battling Derrick Jones Jr. and Tim
Yeah.
Hardaway Jr. last year to be a starter in training camp. And obviously that went incredibly well for Derrick Jones Jr. But he has the build and the athleticism to be like Derrick Jones Jr. And that's what they really need to see, a guy who can be that small ball four or big three and on this roster. And he could play some flexibility in that offensive scheme if he finds the confidence. And that's what you saw with Derrick Jones Jr. Obviously, he's been in the league, but you have to show confidence when the opportunity is there. And that's what we just want to see, just some flashes to show, hey, I'm fighting for this rotation spot. And when people are injured, I'm gonna be ready. But next year is gonna be my year. But this year, I'm gonna be ready when my name is called. We don't want to just see, okay, he's at the end of games, he's hustling. Like we want to say, hey, this preseason game, OMax is showing out. Like he's all over the place and he's making good reads and he's being aggressive. Even if you miss the shot, it's preseason. Be aggressive and show your defensive versatility.
Yeah, I mean, he's the confidence is huge. I think that was the biggest knock on Josh Green that we had last year was
Hmm.
he looks so tentative, he looks hesitant taking the shot, and I think we saw some improvement from him, and ultimately the injury that kind of cost him his spot with the Mavs. But Omax has got to display that confidence. He's got to, when he catches the ball. We saw it last year. There were times where he'd catch the ball wide open in the corner and wouldn't shoot. He'd kind of, I don't want to say it was confusion, but I think it was just, hesitation on his part of like, do I take this? Do I not? Do I pass? Take the shot, man. It's preseason. Who cares? Show that you're, if you miss it, you come back and make a play on the defensive end, right? Come back and do something else on the offense, set a good screen, like show improvement from where you were. We're not asking you to take Klay Thompson's spot in the starting lineup, just show improvement from year one to year two. So that way Nico and Jason Kidd and the rest of the coaching staff can say, okay, this guy deserves playing time. Like this guy's clearly worked on his game. He clearly wants to be a part of this future. We've got to give him that opportunity.
And that's the thing about Jason Kidd. Like he will do what he has to do. Like
Yeah.
he will make a change if he feels it's best for the team. You saw that. Lively was the rising star. He was the lottery pick. He had an incredible first half of the season. But what did Jason Kidd do? He said, I got to get Gafford in there. I got to get someone with experience who's been in those situations because I'm trying to make a push up the Western Conference to end the season. And it played out well. So, like, he will make a move. Derrick Jones Jr., we didn't know who was going to be that guy. Was it going to be Tim Hardaway Jr., or was it going to be Derrick Jones, or was it going to be Max at the beginning of training camp? So like he will make the best move for the best team because Derrick Jones was one of the last signings on the roster. So it doesn't, obviously that leads me to Klay Thompson because he has to take his spot too. Like he has to not just go off a name. Obviously, he's projected to be the starter for you have to put him in the starting lineup after last year and a big signing like that. But he also has to play for his position. And I think that's what makes him hungry too. Like it's not where, the Warriors where, hey, we got to put you on the bench. Like, like, hey, you have a spot right here, but you got to go take it because Marshall's right behind you. So, and that's what I think fuels him and energizes him. But, to my point is Jason Kidd is going to make the best decision for the team. So that's why I want to see OMax. I want to see Jaden Hardy and I want to see Klay Thompson, take their spots. And it's funny to say we can talk about Klay Thompson. It's funny to say that because he's a 5-time All-Star. He's, like you said, first ballot Hall of Famer. What, top 3 shooter, or top 5 at worst, but top 3 shooter all time.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on him? Because the situation he's coming from with the Warriors, and now that takes a lot to jump to another team, in the twilight, respectfully, of his career. So what do you look forward to from him? Because that's obviously the biggest story of this training camp.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get old Klay Thompson, right? We're not gonna get the lockdown defender. I think he's past that, but he's still, I think he still is, a top, what, 30 player in the NBA, even higher than that potentially. I mean, he's still, like you said, top three shooter of all time. I think he's motivated and I think he's hungry and I think he feels disrespected from what happened last year with the Warriors. I think across the league, I think he feels disrespected, right? I don't think
Mm,
I think people forgot who he was.
yeah.
It's been a few years, obviously, since we've seen that version of Klay. We've talked about the injuries. I think the biggest thing for me is, he could have taken the easy route, and signed with the Lakers and been at home and, where everyone thought he would be and kind of, where his dad works. And,
Mhm.
he could have done that and he would have been adored by the fans and regardless of what happened. But I think he saw the Mavericks situation. He said, I can fill that spot. That's what
Mm,
they need,
yeah.
and that's what I do. And I think he's going to be motivated to prove that. I think he wants to remind people of the Klay Thompson of, a few years ago pre-injury. And he's going to have plenty of opportunities to do it. He's going to get the ball in good spots, to your point. He's going to get some of those pin down screens and be able to come off of them and, catch and shoot is what he does. Even with the ball in his hands, I mean, we've seen him be able to take a couple dribbles and then shoot the ball and get into position, where he wants the shot.
Yeah.
Um, During training camp, I think there's going to be some rust. I think there's going to be nerves, but I think the biggest thing is having this full off season, being able to work with Kyrie and with the coaching staff and with Luca, when he's in the States, I think is huge. You're not just
Mhm.
integrating him mid-season. You have the ability for him to understand he's a smart guy, he's a champion, he's been there, he's done it, he knows what it takes. It's going to be super exciting. I think it's such a seamless fit. It's like, even you can, yeah, Nico identified him and said, okay, that's the guy we want. But for Klay to say, that's where I fit. A lot of players would take the route and go home, and go play for their, childhood team and go look at Jalen Brunson going to where his dad, works, right? Like that's we see that all the time. But for Klay to say, I fit there, that's what they need, and that's me, like that's what I do. That's I think he's gonna I think he's got a chip on his shoulder, coming into this year.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, it's not always roses when you go to, your favorite team growing up or your hometown team. I mean, look at Kyrie. He grew up a Nets fan and he idolized Jason Kidd. He was from Jersey. He the Nets was his team growing up, and look how that went. So like you said, I think he went with, you know, I think he went with his mind and his brain. Like, I need to go on this team because I'm seeing the spots that Derek Jones and PJ Washington are getting. That could be me. Like, those are easy shots for him. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's what's going to be so exciting for Mavs fans to watch is you expect him to make those shots. And when you watch Derek Jones Jr., no offense, I like Derek Jones Jr. a lot.
You're
But
you're sitting there like this. You're like, oh my God, please go in.
yes, you get excited when he makes it. You're like, oh, okay. But with Klay Thompson, when he's shooting those wide open shots, you expect it. Like you're shocked if he misses. And that's the difference of this team. And I think just having a guy like him in comparison to a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. because I think that's the real comparison on this team. I think Najee Marshall is obviously the comparison to Derek Jones Jr. But in the minutes that they play, I think him being a much better shooter, much more dependable shooter. His low is a lot of the people's career highs. Last year was his low. He shot 38% from three.
That's like
It's
38% is
crazy.
awesome. Like,
And you know how many wide open shots the Mavericks wings get with Luca and Kyrie? I mean, the gravity pull that those two have. This is going to be a smooth year for him, but I think like you said, I think on the court it'll be smooth, but I think off the court is going to be a transition. You're in a different city. You played with a team for 11 years. You won championships, like you said. You won championship. You're part of one of the best dynasties, and you're coming to a new team that just came off a finals appearance. There's a lot of pressure, and I think he loves it. I think he
Yeah.
loves
Yeah.
it. That's why I think it's going to be a transition, but in a good way. Just being in a different locker room, driving to a different arena every day, going to a different practice facility, and just being in the rhythm of being the NBA player outside of the Warriors.
And I think the relationship he has with Nico Harrison and with
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving, I think helps a lot. He's not coming
And Jason Kidd.
to a brand new and Kidd. Yeah, he's not coming to a brand new team where he doesn't know anybody, he hasn't played with anybody. Him and Kyrie have played on Team USA before. He's got a great relationship with Nico.
Yes.
You've got other veterans. You've got Markieff Morris on this team, who's a veteran who's been around the block, who's played with superstars before. I think that helps as well. That helps ease that transition for Klay Thompson. If he goes to LA, like, sure, you've got Bron and Anthony Davis, but other than the fact that you grew up in LA, like, what other ties do you have to that team? There's not anything real there, and that's why Mark Cuban said it. He said it multiple times this offseason, but the pitch to Klay Thompson was from Nico and Kyrie. Like Cuban,
Kyrie, yeah,
Cuban didn't have anything to do with it. So just the relationship that those guys have with Klay, I think that's going to ease that transition for him. And you add another guy that's been there, that's done it, that knows what it takes to win. And he's also been on the other side of it, on the flip side of it, being up 3-1 against the Cavs and losing that finals. He's been on that side of it too. So he knows, hey, like, this is what's going wrong. This is what we have to do. He's got knowledge of both sides of that. And I think it's invaluable for a young team like the Mavericks.
And he's a student of the game. I mean, he was watching the 2011 championship run.
Yep.
I mean, he studies the game. Before his free agency meeting with the Mavericks, he was studying film of the championship series between Mavs and Celtics, imagining himself in the role of Derrick Jones Jr., getting those open shots. And because, game 3, that was a close, they lost by 7? I mean, obviously you lose, but, if it's, 1-2 instead of 3, I mean, you have some light there. And I think what that comes back to my point was, if you put him in the spot of THJ, obviously he's going to have a little bit more minutes. He projects to be a starter, but he's still just minutes wise. If you look at the comparison, I just think him having, much better shot at making dependable threes, and not only that, but in tight games, not just when you're playing the Pistons or you're playing the Hornets, like when you're playing on national television against the Thunder, against the Celtics, against, the Nuggets, like the Timberwolves, those type of teams, like you can depend on him. And I think just the difference between the two, I think he will actually help the Mavericks push up. Obviously, they had a great second half of the season after the trade deadline, but I think he will push the Mavericks up in the standings just alone on the difference of making those threes in comparison to, THJ and Derrick Jones Jr.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I think there's going to be a trust there from Luka and Kyrie. I feel like you have to gain the trust of those two guys, for them to be able to pass you the ball. And we kind of saw that dwindle throughout the year last year with Tim Hardaway Jr. and even with Derrick Jones, in the playoffs. After, he couldn't hit anything. I think you saw kind of Luka and Kyrie looking for PJ Washington, or just saying, you know what, we'll take it ourselves at that point. But now you've got a proven guy, and I think he's going to easily gain the trust of both of them. And even through his struggles, the fact that he's, we've seen what he's done in his career. Everyone goes through bad stretches, but he's, it's easy to, you're going to be in a good position to be able to get out of that real quickly, with the number of passes that he's going to be able to catch from Luka and Kyrie just sitting there on the wing, or even at the top of the key as they drive in. This is going to be, one of the best situations, probably the best situation he's ever played in. You being, playing with those two guys. I know you talked about it, the dynasty with the Warriors and playing with Steph, but that was a very different role than what he's going to play this year with the Mavericks. This is going to be, he doesn't have to be that second guy anymore. He can be that third, fourth option, that can take over games. You've got a guy that's only going to play, probably 30 minutes a game, but he could go off for 30, 35 points any given night, with reduced minutes. And
Yep.
it's just it's going to be a luxury for the Mavericks to have a guy like.
And that just goes back to your point how deep this team is. He doesn't have to play over 30 minutes a game. He doesn't have to. You can get Grimes in there. You can get Marshall in there you can get Exum in his spot. Like he doesn't have to play all those minutes so you can save him for a playoff run. That's why he came here, to help you get you over the hump for a championship. And I like what you said about trust. That's something that a lot of people don't realize when you understand, but you really don't understand on trust. Because like when you watch these players, obviously they have trust in their teammates, but there's a deeper layer to that when you say trust. Like when the last year's team, everybody was looking to Kyrie, everybody was looking to Luka, and everybody was looking to Markieff Morris, guidance, as obviously different styles, like on the court or off the court leadership, or verbal, non-verbal leadership. But they were looking to those guys. And with Klay Thompson, you don't have to look to him. You don't have to look to him to hype him up. He's been through it. Like he's gonna make shots at worst, even if he has even a down year like last year, just making 38% from three. The Mavs will take that.
Yeah, 38% is awesome. Like that's I mean, that's normal. Like that's NBA average. His lowest point is NBA average.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And also, it's going to be different for him defensively. Like obviously he doesn't even have to be a defensive stopper. And that's the biggest thing, is just play team defense and rely on your big man back there, because Lively and Gafford back there as your rim stoppers. I mean, those two will help you out much more than the scheme that they had in Golden State.
Yeah, you just funnel everything into those guys and let them clog the paint. And if you can just play decent perimeter defense, I mean, this team is going to be hopefully right back where they were last year, with a better shot at winning the finals, now that you've got more of a complete roster. And I think Klay is so well respected across the league. And I think you talk about the students of the game. I mean, Luka knows his history, and I bet you there's a huge respect there, Luka, to Klay Thompson. And I don't know I don't know the ins and outs of him and Tim Hardaway Jr.'s relationship at all, but I think for a guy like Luka, who's a student of the game, who has immense gratitude and respect for people across the league, you bring in a guy like Klay Thompson, who's won those championships, and Luka's watched him play and has seen what he's done. I think that's a huge factor in this as well.
It is, and he doesn't have to listen to a dad saying he needs to give his son more shots.
He's still talking. Like he came out the other day, and he was
senior.
Like, come on, man! Like, dude,
get over it. Like, get out. He spent what, 6-7 years here. Like that. You should be happy at that.
Should have been gone 3 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. Like, get over it. Like, get over it.
Just ridiculous. He keeps yapping. Keeps yapping.
I think he thinks that if his son played, he did play in game 3. He had 19 minutes. And he went 0 for 5.
He was awful.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think all due respect to him, because if I had a son in the NBA, I would be saying the same thing. I would be saying the same thing. But at some point, you got to let reality set in.
Yeah.
I'm saying he can have those opinions. Like, that's his opinion. He can have that. But you got to keep it in the house. You're making it bad for THJ.
Yeah, he's going on like national television and all these podcasts and stuff, and that's all he does is talk about how he was mistreated by the Mavs, and it's like, dude, your son sucked. Reality check, bro. Like, come on.
That's what I'm saying. If he's having a career year and the Mavs don't play him, but he had many opportunities. It just wasn't working. Dante Exum took his spot, and Jaden Hardy, like all these players were taking his spot.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens if you don't perform. Somebody's coming for your job, man. This is a tough business.
So Shahnavaz, it feels so good to be back. The season is here, man.
Ooh.
We got Media Day Monday. We got training camp in Vegas this upcoming week, and then we got the Grizzlies coming to the Mavericks October 7th for the first preseason game. I hope John Morant plays. That would be great to just see him back on the court and just see how the Grizzlies mesh for what, a quarter. You know, it's the
Yeah.
first preseason game, but just it'll be great to have basketball back. So we'll get into more of our predictions and projections for this team next week. But for this episode, let's say last word. What do you look forward to with Dereck Lively in his second year coming back to the team?
I want to see if he takes more outside shots. We saw him hit that one in Game 4,
Yeah,
against Boston Finals, and it's a good looking stroke, man.
it
I mean,
felt so
that's
good. That,
he looked
that brother can shoot.
he
Like
looks good. Yeah,
in high school, he was shooting all the time.
I think I remember. I think it was during the combine he was hitting threes.
Yeah,
While he
yeah.
was working out for teams. So I want to see if Dallas gives him, if Jason Kidd gives him a little bit more opportunity to be able to take those shots, because he'll get the chance, with Luka and Kyrie driving the ball. And now that you've got Klay, if you put Klay on one corner and Lively on the other, and you just swing the ball around, it's going to be interesting to see if he can turn into to be a threat from outside as well. Now that he's already a threat inside, it'll be such a great addition to his game and for this team as well.
I like that you said and for the team because not only Luka and Kyrie drives, but PJ Washington, his slashes to the hole, or Najee Marshall,
Yeah,
just having that space, and I think that's what's so nice because he does rebound so good. So you kind of don't want him just to be a Brook Lopez, just standing out there, but also you want to see at least him. I mean, it's going to take time to develop it into a consistent, just 3-point shooter. Not even talking about making shots, but just taking shots, a lot of shots. But it would be nice to have him take a 3-point attempt every other game, just to transition, take that next step in his career as being multifaceted, because he can, like you said, he can shoot and he can do a lot more like offense. He can Euro step. He has post moves, but he's in a system, especially a team trying to win and a good team, so he has to play his role, but you slowly want to see more each season. And that's a great point that I would like to see that as well.
it just adds another dimension, right, to what this team
Yes.
can do. They're already so versatile with the pieces that they have, but if you talk about adding that as well, another threat outside, a guy that probably unexpectedly for most opponents, if Dereck Lively starts hitting those shots, it's going to be like, what the hell do we do now? How do we guard this team?
Yeah. And I also want to see just continuity from Gafford and Washington, just having that next step in training camp where they already know the plays, they already know the teammates. Now it's just taking the next step on being confident. Obviously, they're confident players, but just being aggressive instead of just playing their role. I would like to see Washington take a next step and say, hey, no, I'm the third option here, and I actually, I'm going to take a next step and I'm going to create some offense instead of just, all right, we need, Luka's out or Kyrie's out, we need another guy to score. It would be nice to see him take aggressive, be aggressive when the starting lineups on the court. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. So Shahnavaz, we're wrapping up our first episode of the season. It's always a pleasure doing this podcast with you. Make sure y'all like and subscribe now that we are back and we're getting into the groove this season. And follow us on social. You see our handles there, so make sure y'all follow us on social. Leave the podcast with this. One name. Give me one name who stands out the most in training camp.
Man, one name that stands. Ooh, okay, I got one. Najee Marshall.
I like it. I like it. There you have it, folks. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. Goodbye, everyone.